Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's Brave Cat here once again with another Frontier Signals update. So tonight should be a fairly quick update here, and looking at the space weather side of things, we do have an uptick into the C-class range, and this is going to be due to the active regions that have still not quite faced us yet here. So we can get a better look at those on some of the other images down below, but I'll go over those here in a minute. But what we can see so far does get a little bit cut off here, but as these active regions come to face us, they are starting to become a little bit more temperamental. So you can see quite a bit of activity going on here, even though there's no direct flaring at the moment. And so as well, I'm going to kind of give a rundown on what the space weather feed on this website is going to be looking like here, because it's getting closer to the, I guess, finalized version here before I put this thing out. So again, I have the magnetic field line images for all of these, and this is a pretty updated image here, so you can just see how bright those incoming active regions are looking, and they're pretty magnetically turbulent, I guess, for lack of a better term here. So going down the list here of all the angstroms, and again, I have descriptions for each of these, so there's going to be quite a lot to offer, even just on this one dashboard page, and it shouldn't be too hard to load. My current internet isn't actually that great, and I'm able to load this entire page without too many issues. So it's really just a bunch of static images as well as some short MP4s that have to load. So it's really not much here. And again, we've got the imagery and descriptions for each and every single one of these things. And then today I added a chronograph feed on here. So this is coming from the GOES 19. And if we just take a look at this for the day, if it'll load, maybe it won't. I say that, and we're having trouble here. Might have to come back to that, but there's really not too much going on there. You can kind of see on the western side there is a little bit of plasma kind of shooting off there. And of course, now that I say that, I am now having trouble loading things. So I guess we'll just kind of move on from that and look again at the far side sunspots here. And they are just on the precipice of coming to the Earth-facing side. So probably tomorrow or the day after, we're going to be able to get a full view on this orange and the green section, which are those two bright active regions that we saw up here. So looking at these two regions are definitely going to be an Earth-facing view here within the next day or two. And try not to hold my breath too much for that. But going down here, there does look to be some internal charging hazards on these satellites here with these feeds, which, you know, there hasn't really been much going on, and yet there seems to be some turbulence there. And then all the way down here, last, we have the forecast models for the auroras. And I don't have any description for these down here, because while they should be pretty self-explanatory of what you're looking at. And so moving on from that here, we're going to start things off at the tremor map. And so what I did, I actually loaded everything from the entire month. That's why it looks like there's a lot going on. So most of this is going to be from the beginning of the month and even going into last month. So everything in the red is going to be recent. Everything in the yellow is going to be the oldest. So it looks like we've had, over the last month, pretty much the entire plate here from north to south having some type of slow slip events happening. So even though we haven't had a lot happening in the last few days, we've still had movement recently going throughout the entire plate and bringing things over here on EQ3D. Things are looking relatively quiet for the last day or so. So most of the activity is going to be going on up here in Alaska, and the ongoing tremors and low-level activity into the United States. So again, there's not too much to report, but we do have to keep an eye on this swarm up in Alaska following that 6, because while it was aftershocks, but at this point it just seems to be swarming with more earthquakes. So we'll have to see how that develops. And then going here into Europe, we've had another 4 and some stuff going on further, but again, not a whole lot to report on for today. So let's just take things over to the volcanic feeds here, where we see more or less pretty similar stuff going on here, but we do have a bit of an extended list going in for today. So a lot of the kind of same stuff here, mostly in Indonesia and the Philippines, as well as Central and South America. But, you know, it seems like the ash emissions have more or less kind of simmered out here. So that is something to note. And then, well, really the last thing I was going to mention here was actually going to be the Solar Killshot Action Network, because I think this year is going to be a pretty big year for preppers and communities and off-grid homesteading to kind of flourish and come together. So I'm really excited to see what happens, and I want to try to be a part of whatever I can. So just giving a little shout out there, because this place is going to be developing and growing as a global place to collect and meet other people, discuss all sorts of ideas, bounce ideas across from each other. And so I'm proud to be a part of this community for sure. So with that, I think I'll kind of just round off the update for tonight. So hope you all enjoyed, and I'll catch you all in the next.